Suns last night, and you couldn't beat Denver without Jamal Murray, and the Suns are rolling them, and the Suns have a bunch of young players only getting better. I was like, oh, how discouraging for Dame Lillard. When you talk to people around the NBA, I mean, Dame just signed an extension. Is Dame a Blazer next year? I mean, what is the feeling you get? By the way, I don't even know who suggested this. It may have been Chris Mannix who came out and said, should they consider moving him and just kind of restarting? And because you could get so much for Dame. What is your take on him today?
I haven't heard anything that would suggest that Damian Lillard is going to leave Portland at this point. There are some changes that need to be made and improvements over the summer, but this is so much a part of who Damian Lillard is in terms of the guy who's staying with a franchise, who has taken a small market, and he's built, not that brand is everything. At some point you have to win, but Damian Lillard has developed quite a presence and a personality by being the best player in a small market that's never come close to winning a championship.
Yeah.
If he goes any place else, a lot of what we think of Damian Lillard ultimately changes. He is loyalty personified, and he's the little guy who continues to try personified. If he goes anyplace else, number one, it's not a guarantee if he's going to have a better chance at winning a championship that he's necessarily the number one. And then that changes the entire dynamic. So I haven't heard anything from Damian or Damian's camp or anybody else in the NBA that would suggest at this point that Damian is looking to get out of Portland. And I assure you this, unless Damian Lillard wants out of Portland, the Blazers are not going to move him just to rework things. Because while we can look at whether they've had success or not, the possibility of getting another Damian Lillard, of that brand, that personality, that leadership, would be far, far more difficult than I think people suggest. This idea, let's just go back and let's start over. The Portland Trailblazers feel very fortunate that they've had a Damian Lillard that has been as devoted to them as he has been over all these years.
A year ago, he was the face of the league. Giannis now looks like a liability late in games. I can't even remember, and it's interesting. But let's say, Brooklyn, let's say again tonight, he shoots 50% from the free throw line. He only shoots 33% beyond 3 feet. I don't remember a player who went from here, from MVP face of the league to, wow, you can't win if he's a 1. What are people now? If they get rolled in this series and lose in 4 or 5, does it just change how we view Giannis? Like just completely change how we view him?
That's not how it's not how I view him because, look, he wasn't my MVP the previous 2 years for this very reason. And it was for the first time this season where I saw him operating in the mid-range and taking mid-range shots and making mid-range shots with confidence. And I can't shake out of my head what I saw between the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks, between Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo. It was a old-fashioned shootout between the two, and Giannis ultimately won the battle. Now, that's regular season, and the postseason is different. What I don't get and what I don't see from the Milwaukee Bucks is a connection between Mike Budenholzer and Giannis Antetokounmpo in terms of how they were going to approach the game. I didn't see him operating for the most part in the mid-post or in the pinch post below the free throw line. That's where he has to operate. This idea that he has to shoot threes, I don't want Giannis Antetokounmpo operating above the three-point line, honestly, any more than I want LeBron James giving me a steady diet of that. I need my big, nearly 7-foot playmaker to be operating below the free throw line. And that's what has really astonished me in this series so far, is that we have not seen that. And when we have seen it, Giannis hasn't been as good there as he was in the regular season. So I'm not giving up on Giannis or the Bucks in terms of this series. They have a lot of work to do, but I can't look, if I'm going to look at Giannis and say that he's not carrying the water in this series, then don't I have to look at the reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic and suggest that he's not doing the same against the Phoenix Suns? Some guys, first of all, if you're playing big, and I think Giannis, for the most part, has to play big. They have to play him at the 5 to win this series. That's what they did during the regular season. Then you're dependent on the pieces around you to get the ball where you need it. And you also need your coach designing plays that are going to put you in the right spot. And I haven't seen any of that from the Milwaukee Bucks.
So it is. I'm watching Chris Paul last night, and he has a higher regular season win percentage than KD, Steph, and Kobe Bryant. He actually does. And he's inherited a natural disaster, Donald Sterling, a tanking franchise. A lot of dysfunction, chaos his whole career, and he just keeps overcoming it. And I sit and I think to myself, and this league won't. He's like the Russell Wilson in the NFL who can't get an MVP vote. I watched them last night in that game. Totally controls the game. 50. No turnovers. I don't even know. I'm trying to think of a comp for Chris Paul of a player that is so clearly running a franchise, running a conference, head and shoulders, and we give him no respect. I don't know if there's a comp out there, but I'm watching him with Jokic, and Jokic is the MVP. Chris can't get nominated, and it's night and day. One is totally controlling the series, and one is just really talented. That's my takeaway on the series so far.
And that's a pretty good one, I would say. It's also, you point out something that I think is important, which is it always helps a leader when he's walking into a disaster zone. People are far more willing to listen. What do we need to do? We need to go get water? Where are the rations? That's what Chris Paul inherited. He inherited a Phoenix Suns team that is incredibly hungry, one, to have a leader, and two, to have that leader show them exactly what they need to do. I also believe, to my point about the coach-player relationship, like Monty Williams and Chris Paul are from the same DNA. They're connected. And I see that in the way that they communicate. So he has the benefit of that. But the other element with Chris Paul, and we're into analytics big time, one of the things that we do not seem to appreciate anymore is assist-to-turnover ratio. You never hear anybody talking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe in part because if you look at Jokic or Luka Doncic or LeBron James, the assist-to-turnover ratio is not very good. Guys are throwing a lot of dimes. Russell Westbrook's throwing a lot of dimes. You look at the assist-to-turnover ratio, it's not great. One steady element is that Chris Paul has always had a tremendous assist-to-turnover ratio. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the greatest passer. What it means is the ball is secure in his hands.
Yeah.
And more often than not, you're going to get a chance to score when the ball is in his hands rather than something that's going to send it the other way before you even get a shot off. 10 years ago, he was leading the league in assist-to-turnover ratio. You look at the top 10 this year, he's the only name of any significance. I believe he finished 4th. Tyus Jones led the league in assist-to-turnover ratio. You want to go through James Harden, LeBron James, Luka Doncic? Most of those guys are not even in the top 50. That matters, and it matters especially in the postseason, and it's why Chris Paul is having the great impact that he has.
Ric Bucher, it's great seeing you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by.
You got it.
Yeah, the assist in basketball doesn't get love because it's usually followed